High Evaluator ZXTL stared at his display screen with growing confusion. His 3 hearts beat faster as he checked the numbers again. Something was wrong with the sensors. It had to be the sensors. The Imperial Survey Fleet had been mapping this sector of space for 6 months. It was boring work, the kind of assignment given to officers who had angered someone important. Serthal knew he was being punished for speaking against Admiral Kremoth at the last military gathering. Now he was stuck cataloging dead rocks and primitive worlds in the outer reaches of the galaxy. Earth was supposed to be one of those primitive worlds, the file said. Humans were barely capable of leaving their own planet. 200 years ago, when the Empire first found them, they were using explosive chemicals to push tiny metal boxes into space. The report had noted them as violent but technologically insignificant and scheduled them for another review in 500 years, but the sensors were showing something impossible. Commander, his second officer called out. She was a young Krevok female named Tixra, fresh from the Imperial Academy. I'm detecting massive energy signatures in the inner system. The readings don't match anything in our database. Tixra felt a chill run through his scales. Show me. The main view screen flickered to life. What he saw made his breath catch. Orbiting the human star were thousands of structures. They formed a partial shell around the burning ball of gas, each one collecting its light and heat. A Dyson swarm. The Empire had studied such concepts in theoretical physics classes, but no one actually built them. They required too many resources, too much coordination, too much time. Move us closer to the 5th planet, Zixthal ordered. His voice sounded strange in his own ears as the fleet approached Jupiter. The impossibilities multiplied. Massive factories floated in orbit, each one larger than an imperial city. Streams of raw materials flowed from automated mining ships working the asteroid belt and around Jupiter itself, stretching in a partial arc that would one day circle the entire planet. Was the skeletal framework of a ring world. That's not possible, Tixra whispered. The structural requirements alone. The Empire tried to build one of these 5,000 years ago. The mathematics said it would collapse under its own gravity. We abandoned the project, ZXThal said. Nothing. He was too busy staring at the construction drones. They moved in perfect synchronization, millions of them working together like a single organism. The efficiency was terrifying. Scan for warp signatures, he finally managed to say. The humans must have stolen this technology. Check for Imperial engine traces, Drexian quantum markers, anything that would explain this. The scan took 3 minutes. When it completed, Tix returned to face him with wide eyes. Commander, there are no Imperial signatures. The technology is completely foreign. Nothing matches our databases. Check again. I've checked 4 times, sir. Zygthal stood up from his command chair. His legs felt weak. In his 300 years of service to the Galactic Dominion, he had never encountered anything like this. The Empire's technology was the standard. Every species in the galaxy used the same basic principles, followed the same development path. It was the natural order of things, except these humans apparently hadn't received that message. Get me a channel to Imperial Central Command, Zixthal said. Maximum encryption market priority alpha. The communication officer nodded and began Working, it would take several minutes for the quantum relay to connect across the vast distance to the Empire's core. Worlds, while he waited, Zixthal reviewed the human file again. 200 years ago, they had been fighting wars among themselves using primitive explosives. Their computers were mechanical and simple. Their longest space journey had been to their own moon. What could cause a species to advance this quickly? Channel established, Commander. The communications officer announced. The face of a bored-looking bureaucrat appeared on the screen. He was a Thilnari, a species known for their patience and careful record-keeping. Survey Fleet Delta 9, your report. We have a situation, Zixthal began. The humans on Earth have constructed mega structures, a partial Dyson swarm, and what appears to be a ring world in progress around their fifth planet. The bureaucrat's expression didn't change. That's impossible. Humans are a pre-warp civilization. Your sensors must be malfunctioning. I've triple-checked everything. I'm sending you the raw data. Now, there was a long pause as the bureaucrat reviewed the information. His face slowly shifted from boredom to confusion to something that might have been fear. How did they get this technology? The bureaucrat finally asked. Unknown. There are no imperial signatures. Whatever they're using, they didn't steal it from us. Another pause. Stand by. I'm escalating this to the Grand Inquisitor's office. The channel went dark. Zixthal sat back down in his chair. Around him, his crew worked in unusual silence. Everyone understood that they had stumbled onto something that would shake the Empire's foundations. Commander, the sensor officer called out, I'm detecting more anomalies. There are structures in the outer system as well, and sir, I'm picking up what looks like antimatter refineries. The output levels are equivalent to an entire imperial sector. That's impossible, Zixthal said automatically. Then he stopped himself. He had said that word too many times today. Clearly his definition of impossible needed updating. A junior analyst approached his command chair. She looked nervous. Sir, I found something in the archives. The humans weren't scheduled for another evaluation for 300 more years. We cataloged them 200 years ago and then left them alone. So in 200 years, they went from chemical rockets to mega structure engineering. The Empire's founding species took 50,000 years to achieve the same level of development. The words hung in the air like poison. Every officer on the bridge had heard them, and every officer understood the implications. The Galactic Dominion had ruled the known galaxy for more than 50,000 years. It had brought order, stability, and peace to 847 species. Across 12 spiral arms, the Empire's technology was advanced, proven, and standardized. Their way was the only way, but somewhere in this backwater system, a species of violent primates had looked at the Empire's impossible and built it anyway. They had done in 2 centuries what should have taken 50 millennia, and they had done it using principles and methods that the Empire's own scientists couldn't even recognize. Zixthal realized his hands were shaking. He was a military officer trained to face danger without fear, but this wasn't danger. This was something far more unsettling. This was the unknown. All ships maintain position, he ordered. Maximum stealth protocols. We watch and wait for orders from Central Command. As his crew carried out his commands, Zixthel couldn't stop staring at the ring world taking shape around Jupiter. Somewhere down there on that primitive blue world, humans were building the impossible, and they were just getting started. Grand Inquisitor Malfex reviewed the report for the 7th time. Each reading made him more suspicious. In his 400 years of service, he had dealt with dozens of species that had acquired technology beyond their development level. Usually they had stolen it. Sometimes a more advanced species had illegally shared it. Either way, the solution was always the same: confiscation and correction. But the human situation felt different. His investigative armada consisted of 200 warships, 50 science vessels, and enough firepower to sterilize a planet. It was probably excessive, but Malk believed in being prepared. The Galactic Dominion maintained its peace through overwhelming force when necessary. The journey to Earth's solar system took 3 weeks. During that time, Malk studied everything the Empire knew about humans. It wasn't much. They were mammals, which was unusual but not unique. They had originated on a single planet with a relatively hostile environment. Their history was filled with wars and conflict. Standard territorial species behavior. What wasn't standard was their technological progression curve. It was almost vertical. We're approaching the system now, Inquisitor. His navigation officer announced. Begin long range scans. I want a complete catalog of every structure, every ship, every energy signature. Compare everything against our database. The scans took hours. With each passing minute, Malk felt his certainty crumbling. The initial report hadn't been wrong. If anything, it had understated the situation. The Dyson swarm was more complete than expected. Thousands of collection satellites orbited the human star, feeding energy to processing stations and planetary facilities. The ring world around Jupiter had grown. Construction drones worked in shifts that never ended, adding new sections to the massive structure. But those weren't the worst discoveries, sir, his chief scientist called out. She was an elderly Cray named Silith, who had been analyzing technology for 2 centuries. I'm detecting quantum entanglement communication networks throughout the entire system. The bandwidth is extraordinary, and the methodology, what about it? It doesn't match any known imperial standard. They're using a completely different approach to quantum stabilization. Malfex frowned. Are you saying they invented their own method? Either that or they acquired it from a species we've never encountered. Over the next several days, the reports continued to pile up. Human fusion drives that achieved incredible speeds without using exotic matter, artificial gravity generators that worked on principles the Empire scientists insisted were impossible, shipyards that produced vessels at a rate that should have required 10 times their population. Every piece of technology was wrong, not primitive wrong, just different wrong. We're being hailed. The communications officer announced it's coming from the 3rd planet. Audio and visual put it through. The main screen flickered to life. A human woman appeared wearing formal clothing in dark colors. Her hair was black with streaks of gray. She smiled, but MX could see the calculation in her eyes. Greetings, Grand Inquisitor. I am Ambassador Chenikoy, representing the United Earth Coalition. We've been expecting you. Malex felt a chill. You knew we were coming. Of course, we detected Survey Fleet Delta 9 3 weeks ago, we've been tracking your armada since you left Imperial space. She paused, her smile widening slightly. Your quantum encryption is quite sophisticated. It took us almost 5 years to crack it. The bridge fell silent. Imperial quantum encryption was supposed to be unbreakable. It was based on principles of physics that were considered fundamental laws of the universe. I want to speak face to face, Malk said, recovering his composure. Neutral territory, we need to discuss your acquisition of restricted technology we haven't acquired anything, Inquisitor, but yes, let's meet. I'll send coordinates for a station in the asteroid belt. Come alone or bring your entire fleet. We have nothing to hide. The channel closed. Malk sat back in his command chair, thinking. The human woman had been confident, too confident. That usually meant either ignorance or strength. He didn't think humans were ignorant. 2 hours later, Malex found himself in a shuttle approaching a human space station. He had brought a security detail and his chief scientist. The station was smaller than he expected. A simple rotating cylinder that generated gravity through spin, primitive but functional. Ambassador Chen met them at the airlock. In person she was shorter than Malklex, which was true of most species compared to his kind, but she carried herself with authority. Welcome aboard the Galileo station, she said. Please follow me to the conference room. The interior of the station was clean and efficient. Human crew members moved through the corridors with purpose. Some of them glanced at Malex and his team with curiosity, but no one seemed afraid. That bothered him more than he wanted to admit. The conference room had a large window showing the construction happening around Jupiter. The ring world gleamed in the distance, a monument to engineering that should not exist. Let's skip the pleasantries, Malk said as they sat down. How did you acquire megastructure construction technology? Which species violated Imperial law by sharing it with you? Ambassador Chen opened a data pad and slid it across the table. No one shared anything with us, Inquisitor. We developed everything ourselves. That pad contains historical documentation, mathematical proofs, patent records, and research papers going back 200 years. Every piece of technology we use was invented by human scientists working on human worlds using human resources. Malex picked up the pad. Silith leaned over his shoulder to look at it. What he saw made his blood run cold. Documents were genuine. He could tell by the dating methods, the linguistic evolution, the scientific progression. No one could fake this level of detail. The humans had started with basic rocketry and worked their way up. Each step was documented. Each breakthrough was attributed to specific individuals. This is impossible, Silith whispered. No species develops this quickly. The technological tree doesn't allow for such rapid advancement. What technological tree? Ambassador Chen asked. The standard progression. All species follow the same basic path of development, from chemical propulsion to nuclear power to fusion to antimatter, from radio to quantum communication, from mechanical computers to quantum processors. It's the natural order of technological evolution. Chen laughed. It wasn't a mocking laugh, but it still made Malklex uncomfortable. Inquisitor, there is no natural order. There are only problems waiting for solutions. We approached each challenge with fresh eyes and no preconceptions. We didn't know there was a proper way to do things, so we invented our own ways. But the mathematics alone, Silith protested. The calculations required for a stable ring world are incredibly complex. Empire's best minds worked on the problem for decades and concluded it was impractical. Then your best minds made a mistake, Chen said simply. Our mathematician, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, solved the structural stability problem using non-Euclidean geometry and quantum field theory. Her paper is on page 412 of that data pad. She was 26 years old when she published it. Malex felt dizzy. He had come here expecting to find theft or deception. Instead, he had found something far more troubling. The humans had done exactly what they claimed. They had built the impossible through sheer determination and innovation. What else have you built? He asked quietly. Ambassador Chen's smile returned. Would you like a tour over the next 3 days? Malk and his team were shown wonders and horrors in equal measure. Every human facility they visited broke another fundamental rule of imperial science. The defensive platforms that made weapons miss through quantum probability manipulation. The medical centers where humans had conquered aging and death. The factories filled with self-replicating machines that the Empire had banned 30,000 years ago after a catastrophic accident. Most shocking of all were the human ships. They didn't use the Empire's warp gates. They had their own faster-than-light drives based on space-folding mathematics that Imperial scientists had never considered. On the third night, Malk sat alone in his quarters aboard his flagship. He had sent his report to the Imperial Council hours ago. Now he waited for their response, knowing that whatever they decided would change the galaxy forever. Silith entered without knocking. She looked exhausted and shaken. I've been analyzing their technology for 3 days, she said, and I've realized something terrible. What? They're not going to stop this level of innovation, this pace of development. In 1,000 years, they'll be so far beyond us that we'll seem primitive, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. Malk nodded. Slowly, he had reached the same conclusion. Somewhere in the depths of space, the Galactic Dominion was about to learn a painful lesson. Impossibility was just another word for something that hadn't been done yet. Counselor Zari had lived for 4,000 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had witnessed the birth of new stars and the death of old civilizations. She had dedicated her entire existence to the pursuit of knowledge and the advancement of imperial science. None of it had prepared her for what the humans were about to show her. The science delegation had arrived 2 weeks after Grand Inquisitor Malfex's initial report. Extari led a team of the Empire's brightest minds representing 12 different species and hundreds of scientific disciplines. Their mission was simple: verify or disprove the human claims of independent technological development. Ambassador Chen greeted them at the same station where Malex had first met her. The human woman seemed amused by the size of the delegation. Welcome, Counselor. I understand you want to see our work. I want to understand how you accomplished the impossible. Ixari replied. Her voice was old and tired, but her eyes were sharp. And I want to know if it's real or if we're being deceived. Then let me show you something we call Project Heimdall. They took a human shuttle to a platform floating Near Mars, the structure was smaller than Athari expected, barely larger than a standard Imperial defense station, but the readings her instruments were giving off made no sense. Inside, human technicians worked at control panels, covered in displays and switches. A tall human male with gray hair approached them. He wore a white coat marked with symbols that Chen explained were for the Human Scientific Organization. "This is Dr. James Park," Chen said. "He designed Project Heimdall." "Pleasure to meet you," the human said, offering his hand in the strange human greeting ritual. Ixari touched it briefly with her manipulator tentacle. "What does this facility do?" she asked. "It's a defensive platform," Dr. Park replied. "Would you like a demonstration?" He led them to an observation window. In the distance, Ixari could see several human drones setting up targets. When they were in position, Dr. Park nodded to one of his technicians. "We'll fire standard Imperial plasma bolts at this platform. Watch what happens." One of the drones opened fire. The bright blue plasma shot strayed through space toward the platform. Ixari waited for the shields to activate for the familiar shimmer of energy barriers that every species in the galaxy used for defense. Nothing happened. The plasma bolts simply missed. They curved away at the last moment, spiraling off into empty space as if repelled by an invisible force. But there was no energy signature, no shield frequency, nothing her instruments could detect. "What did you do?" Ixari demanded. "We manipulated probability fields," Dr. Park explained. "At the quantum level, there's always a small chance that any particle will be somewhere other than where you expect it. We've found a way to enhance that probability. When weapons fire at us, we increase the chance that the particles will miss. They still follow the laws of physics, but they follow unlikely paths instead of likely ones." "That's impossible," one of Ixari's assistant researchers said. "You can't manipulate probability on a macro scale. The mathematics don't support it." Dr. Park smiled. "The mathematics you use don't support it. We developed a different mathematical framework based on something we call stochastic field theory. It works perfectly fine within that system." Ixari felt something crack inside her mind. She had spent 4,000 years believing that mathematics was universal, that the laws of physics operated the same way for everyone. But these humans were suggesting that different mathematical frameworks could describe different aspects of reality. "Show me your equations," she said quietly. The next 3 days were the most challenging of Ixar's long life. Dr. Park and his team walked her through the mathematical foundation of probability field manipulation. Every step made sense within their framework, but it was completely alien to Imperial mathematical tradition. "Why didn't we discover this?" she finally asked. "Because you never needed to," Dr. Park replied. "You developed energy shields early in your history, and they worked well enough. You never had a reason to look for alternatives. We didn't have access to your shield technology, so we had to find our own solution." They moved on to the next demonstration. This time, Ambassador Chen took them to what humans called the foundries in the asteroid belt. The facilities were massive, stretching for hundreds of kilometers. Inside, machines built more machines in an endless cycle of creation, self-replicating technology. One of the Imperial scientists said with horror, "This was banned by the Dominion 30,000 years ago. A malfunction created a gray goo scenario that consumed 3 colonies. We know, Chen said calmly. We found records of that disaster in the data from an Imperial probe we captured. That's why we designed our nano machines with 17 different failsafe systems. Watch, she pressed a button on her data pad. Throughout the facility, every single machine stopped instantly. The sudden silence was overwhelming. Kill switches, Chen explained. They respond to quantum signals that can't be blocked or jammed. If anything starts to malfunction, we can shut down every machine in the solar system within 3 seconds. Another Imperial scientist examined the machines closely. These safeguards are more sophisticated than anything we could design. How did you? We learned from your mistakes, Chen interrupted. We studied what went wrong with your gray goo incident and designed our technology to prevent every failure mode you encountered, plus a few dozen more we thought of ourselves. Ixari watched the machines restart and resume their work. The precision was beautiful. The efficiency was terrifying, and the implications were staggering. How many of these facilities do you have? She asked. 47 and counting, Chen replied. We're building more every month. Our goal is to have the entire asteroid belt converted into productive infrastructure within 50 years. The tour continued. They visited medical facilities where humans had conquered diseases that still plagued Imperial citizens. They saw research stations where human scientists were working on projects that made Ixari's head hurt just trying to understand them. They watched ships come and go using faster than light drives that didn't require the fixed warp gate infrastructure the Empire had spent millennia building. Every new demonstration was another knife in the heart of Imperial scientific certainty. On the 5th day, they gathered in a large conference room. On Earth itself, it was the first time any of the Imperial delegation had visited the human home world. Through the windows, Ixari could see a blue-green planet covered in clouds and oceans. It looked peaceful deceptively. So, I have a question, Irie said. Your technological development is unprecedented. But why? What drives you to build these things? The Empire has provided peace and stability to the galaxy for 50,000 years. We have everything we need. Why do you keep pushing forward? Ambassador Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the window, looking down at her planet. Because we have to, she finally said. Earth is a harsh world, counselor. It has killed most species that ever lived. Here, ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues. For millions of years, our ancestors survived by adapting or dying. We learned that standing still meant extinction. She turned back to face the delegation. When we reached space, we found a universe that was just as hostile. Radiation, vacuum, extreme temperatures, limited resources. We couldn't count on anyone to save us. We couldn't wait for someone to show us the right way to do things. We had to figure it out ourselves or die trying. But you're safe now, another Imperial scientist protested. You have the resources, the technology. You could stop and enjoy what you've built. Chen shook her head. We tried that once. Actually, about a century ago, there was a political movement that argued we should slow down, consolidate, focus on stability instead of expansion. It was popular for a while. What happened? We got bored, Chen said with a slight Smile, humans need challenges, we need problems to solve and mountains to climb. If we don't have external challenges, we create internal ones. Our history is full of societies that stagnated and then collapsed because they lost the drive to innovate. Ixari understood then the galactic dominion had provided so much peace and stability that most species had lost their edge. They had become comfortable following established patterns and proven methods. Innovation had slowed to a crawl because there was no pressure to change, but humans were different. They carried their hostility with them. They saw every problem as a challenge and every impossibility as an insult. They couldn't stop innovating because it was built into their nature. That night, Ithari composed her report. Her manipulator tentacles shook as she wrote. For 4,000 years she had believed the galactic dominion represented the pinnacle of civilization. She had thought imperial science was the ultimate expression of natural law. The humans had proven her wrong in 5 days. She finished the report and sent it to the Imperial Council with a priority flag. Then she did something she hadn't done in 2,000 years. She cried not from sadness but from the overwhelming realization that her life's work had been built on false assumptions. Universe was so much larger and stranger than the Empire had allowed itself to believe, and somewhere in the void between stars, humanity was just getting started building the impossible. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 3 days straight. Representatives from 847 species filled the massive chamber on the imperial capital world. The debate was fierce and the Empire's unity was cracking. Warm Master Kavek slammed his massive fist on his podium. He was a Draxian, one of the warrior species that formed the backbone of imperial military forces. His species valued strength and hierarchy above all else. We must act now, he roared. His voice echoed through the chamber. These humans are a threat to everything we have built. In 500 years, they will dominate the galaxy. We have the numbers and the firepower. We end this before it begins. A chorus of agreement came from the military faction, nearly 100 species that share the Draxian philosophy nodded their approval. Trade. Prince Velcorum rose to speak. He was a Corvathi, a species known for their business acumen and manipulation. His 6 eyes gleamed with calculated interest. Warm Master Kavek speaks from fear, not wisdom, Balaram said smoothly. Yes, the humans are advanced. Yes, they pose a challenge to our understanding of technology, but why destroy what we can exploit? Force them into the Dominion as a protectorate. Take their research methods, use their innovations to strengthen the Empire. We gain everything and lose nothing. More voices rose in support. The economic faction saw opportunity where others saw threat. From the far side of the chamber, an observer of Thalmor stood. Observers were an ancient species that rarely spoke in council. When they did, everyone listened. You are all thinking too small, the observer said in a voice like wind through crystal. The humans cannot be conquered militarily. They cannot be controlled economically. They are the manifestation of a principle we have forgotten. They are chaos incarnate, and chaos cannot be contained. Quarantine their system, build a barrier, let them develop in isolation, and revisit this question in 10,000 years. The chamber erupted in argument. Species shouted at each other across the Hall, alliances formed and broke within minutes. The unity that had held the Dominion together for 50 millennia was fracturing. Then a young voice cut through the noise. What if we're asking the wrong question? Lyrathnil was barely 200 years old, young by the standards of most council species. She represented a small coalition world on the Empire's outer rim. Most senior members dismissed her as inexperienced, but something in her tone made the chamber fall silent. What question should we be asking? Counselor Ixthari asked from her seat. The ancient scientist looked tired and sad. Not how do we stop them, Lyra said. But why didn't we become them? The humans developed in 200 years what took us 50,000. Warm Master Kavek is right that they're a threat. Trade Prince Velcorum is right that they're an opportunity. The Observer is right that they're unprecedented, but none of you are asking the real question. What did they do that we didn't? They had no guidance, Ixthari said quietly. No one showed them the proper path. They had to invent everything themselves. Exactly. Lyra continued. We gave younger species peace, stability, and proven technology. We thought we were helping them, but maybe we were crippling them. The humans had to innovate because they had no choice. We removed that pressure from everyone else. Warm Master Croaks growled. You suggest we abandon the younger species to chaos and struggle? Let them suffer as the humans did? I suggest we give them a choice, Lyra replied. Let them choose between our way and the human way, between stability and innovation, between peace and progress. The chamber exploded into argument again, but this time the debate had shifted. It was no longer about what to do with humanity. It was about what humanity meant for the Empire itself. While the council argued, Ambassador Chen sat in a secure facility on Earth, monitoring Imperial communications. The humans had been listening to every word of the debate. Their quantum encryption breaking technology gave them access to channels the Empire thought were secure. They're going to fragment. Her military advisor said. He was a retired general named Marcus Webb, veteran of the brief conflicts that had marked humanity's expansion into space. The Council can't reach consensus. Some will want war, others will want exploitation, others will want isolation. Yes, Chen agreed, and war. Master Kavek is going to do something stupid. How do you know? Because we would do the same thing in his position. He's a military leader watching his entire worldview collapse. People like that don't surrender quietly, they lash out. She was right. 3 days later, Grand Inquisitor Malk sent an urgent message to Earth. His face appeared on Chen's screen and she could see the fear in his eyes. Ambassador Chen, you need to prepare for an attack. Warm Master Kavek has left Imperial space with a fleet of 5,000 warships. He's coming to your system. The Council hasn't authorized this action, but by the time they stop him, it will be too late. Chen felt her heart race, but she kept her voice calm. When will he arrive? 36 hours. I'm sending my own forces to intercept, but I won't reach you in time. I'm sorry, we never wanted this. I know, Chen said. Thank you for the warning. The channel closed. Chen immediately activated Earth's defense protocols. Across the solar system, human forces went on alert. The defensive platforms around Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn powered up. The probability field generators activated. The nanomachine swarms moved into position, and in Earth orbit the Human fleet prepared for its first real battle. General Webb looked worried. We've warmed against Imperial forces before, but never at this scale. 5,000 warships is enough to destroy a planet. Then it's a good thing we're not planning to fight fair, Chen replied. She sent a message to all Imperial channels, unencrypted and open for anyone to hear. It was a gamble, but Chen believed in transparency. This is Ambassador Cheniko of the United Earth Coalition. In 36 hours, Warm Master Kavek will arrive in our system with hostile intent. We do not want war. We have never wanted war, but we will defend ourselves with every tool at our disposal. To the Galactic Council, what happens next is not our choice, it's yours. Will you stand by while one of your war leaders commits genocide? Or will you prove that the Dominion's peace means something across the galaxy? Billions of beings heard her words. The message was played on public networks, in government chambers, on military vessels. The Empire citizens, who had lived in peace for 50,000 years, suddenly had to confront an uncomfortable truth. Their military was about to start a war that most of them didn't want. On the Imperial capital, the council chamber was in chaos. Councillor Exthari stood and demanded that Kavek be recalled immediately. Lyrathnil organized a coalition of younger species to oppose military action. Trade Prince Velkaram calculated the economic damage of a war and found it unacceptable, but Warm Master Kavek was already too far away to stop. His fleet was coming, and nothing the council could do would prevent the battle. Malk sat alone in his quarters, thinking about the irony of the situation. He had come to investigate human technology and ended up witnessing the collapse of Imperial unity. The humans hadn't fired a single shot, and yet they had already won a victory. They had forced the Empire to look at itself and question everything it believed. On Earth, Chen watched the countdown timer. 35 hours until the fleet arrived. 35 hours until humanity would prove whether their impossible technology could stand against overwhelming numbers. She wasn't worried about winning the battle. The humans had prepared for this scenario since they first learned about the Galactic Dominion. They had weapons and defenses that the Empire couldn't imagine. What worried her was what came after. Because once the Empire saw what humanity was truly capable of, there would be no going back. The galaxy would never be the same. General Webb approached her with a tablet. All defense systems are ready. The fleet is in position. We're as prepared as we'll ever be. Chen nodded. Then we wait, and when they arrive, we show them why building the impossible is humanity's specialty. Outside her window, Earth turned peacefully in the void. Soon the stars above would be filled with fire and fury, and the galaxy would learn a lesson that the Empire had forgotten. Survival belongs to those who innovate, not those who stagnate. Warm Master Kavek stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human system grow larger on the viewscreen. His fleet of 5,000 warships moved in perfect formation. He had spent 2 centuries building this armada. It represented the finest military force the Drexian hegemony could produce. It should have been more than enough to crush a single primitive species. All ships battle formation. He ordered, target their planetary installations first. We'll show these humans the price of defiance. His tactical officer nodded and began coordinating the fleet. Kavek felt satisfaction building in his chest. This was what the Empire needed: decisive action, clear superiority, a reminder that some species were meant to rule, while others were meant to follow. Then, his sensors detected the human fleet. "Sir, I'm reading only 200 vessels. They're taking position between us and their planets." Kavek laughed. 200 against 5,000. Their arrogance will be their end. All ships weapons free. Destroy them. The battle began. 5,000 Imperial warships opened fire. Simultaneously, the void filled with plasma bolts, particle beams, and missile swarms, enough firepower to vaporize a moon, converged on the human fleet. And then something impossible happened. The weapons missed. Every single shot curved away at the last moment, spiraling off into empty space. Missiles lost tracking and exploded harmlessly. Energy beams bent around their targets as if repelled by invisible barriers. "What's happening?" Kavek demanded. "Why aren't our shields detecting anything? Where are their defensive fields?" His science officer stared at her instruments in confusion. "Sir, there are no shield frequencies, no energy barriers. The weapons are just missing. The probability of this happening naturally is what? About 1 in 10 to the power of 47. The human fleet opened fire. Their weapons didn't miss, but they also didn't kill." Kavek watched in horror as his ships began to shut down, not explode, not burn, just stop. His tactical displays showed vessels going dark across the fleet. Life support remained active, but weapons, engines, and shields were all offline. "They're using some kind of nanomachine attack," his engineer called out. "Microscopic machines are infiltrating our systems and disabling them. I've never seen anything like this. They're rewriting our code, shutting down critical systems, and they're doing it faster than we can respond." Then Kavek felt something change inside his own mind. It started as a whisper of emotion, fear, not his own fear, but someone else's. It grew stronger, more insistent. He could feel terror washing over him, panic and desperation, and he realized with dawning horror that he was feeling what his victims would have felt if his attack had succeeded. All across his fleet, Drexian soldiers were experiencing the same thing. The neural feedback was overwhelming. Trained warriors collapsed at their stations, crying and shaking. They weren't being hurt physically, they were being forced to feel the emotional cost of their actions. "They're using empathy weapons," Kroak whispered. "They're making us feel." His communication officer interrupted. "Sir, we're receiving a message from the human fleet." Ambassador Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked sad, not triumphant. "Warm Master Kavek, I'm giving you one chance to surrender. Your fleet is already defeated. We've disabled your weapons and engines. We've shown you the cost of violence, but we haven't killed anyone. Not one of your soldiers has died. Stand down now and we can end this without bloodshed." Kavek wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, but he looked around his bridge and saw his crew incapacitated, his ships powerless, his mighty fleet reduced to floating metal coffins in 20 minutes. "How?" he asked. "How did you do this?" "We didn't want to fight you," Chen replied. "So we built weapons designed to stop fights without killing. Probability manipulation to make your weapons miss. Nanomachine swarms to disable your systems. Neural feedback to help you understand the consequences of your actions. We've had 200 years to prepare for this moment, warm master. We knew someone would eventually come to destroy us. We decided that when they did, we would defend ourselves without becoming monsters. The transmission ended. Kavek sat down heavily in his command chair. He had lost not just the battle but his entire worldview. The humans had proven that overwhelming force could be defeated by superior innovation. Word of the battle spread across the galaxy. Within hours, the Empire's communication networks carried the news to every inhabited world. Warm Master Kavek's mighty fleet had been defeated in 20 minutes without a single casualty on either side. The Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session. This time the debate was different. They could have destroyed the entire fleet. Counselor Zari said they had the capability, but they chose mercy instead. What does that tell us about their character? It tells us they're more dangerous than we thought. Trade. Prince Velkurim replied, they have the power to defeat our military forces and the restraint to use it wisely. That combination is terrifying. Lyra Thexel stood and addressed the council. Or maybe it tells us they're exactly what we need. The Galactic Dominion has maintained peace through overwhelming force for 50,000 years. The humans are showing us a different path. Peace through innovation, defense without destruction. Perhaps we've been doing this wrong the entire time. The vote that followed was close. In the end, the Council decided not to pursue further military action against humanity. Warm Master Kavek was arrested by his own people for launching an unauthorized attack, and Ambassador Chen was invited to present a proposal to the full Council. She arrived at the Imperial capital 3 weeks later. The Council chamber had never been so full. Every species wanted to hear what the humans had to say. I'm not here to demand anything, Chen began. I'm not here to threaten or condemn. I'm here to offer a choice. The Galactic Dominion has brought stability and peace to this galaxy. That's an incredible achievement, but stability can become stagnation. Peace can become complacency. The Empire has been using the same technology, the same methods, the same thinking for thousands of years, and in that clear's throat time, real innovation has nearly stopped. She paused, looking around the chamber. We humans propose a new framework. We call it the Galactic Cooperative. Species can choose to remain in the Dominion with its proven stability and standardized technology, or they can join the cooperative where innovation is encouraged, where different approaches are welcomed, where the impossible is just another challenge waiting to be overcome. Trade and cooperation between both frameworks would continue. No one is forced to choose. No one is punished for their decision. And what do humans gain from this trade? Prince Velorum asked suspiciously. Partners, Chen replied. Simply, we're not trying to rule anyone. We just want to grow and learn alongside others who share our drive to push boundaries. The universe is vast and full of mysteries. Why should we explore it alone? The proposal sparked the most intense debate in Imperial history. It lasted for months. In the end, the Council approved the creation of the Galactic Cooperative by a narrow margin. 53 species immediately petitioned to join. Another H-100 requested observer status. The Empire's grip loosened not through conquest but through choice. Grand Inquisitor Malf surprised everyone by resigning his position and accepting a role as the first non-human ambassador to the cooperative. He had spent his career investigating and correcting other species. Now he wanted to learn from them instead. Counselor Ixari joined a human university to study their mathematical frameworks. For the first time in 2,000 years, she felt excited about learning. There was so much she had missed, so much the Empire had overlooked in its pursuit of standardization. Lyrathnil led reform efforts within the Dominion itself, creating special zones where member species could experiment with new approaches without abandoning the Empire's stability. 20 years passed, the galaxy had changed. Not overnight but gradually. The division between Dominion and Cooperative wasn't hostile, instead it became productive. The two frameworks competed and cooperated in equal measure. Species that valued stability remained with the Empire. Those that craved innovation joined the Cooperative. Many maintained membership in both. Technology advanced faster in those 20 years than in the previous 2,000. The Dominion, forced to compete with human innovation, began encouraging its own scientists to think more creatively. The Cooperative, learning from imperial experience, avoided many of the pitfalls that came with rapid change. And in orbit around Earth, construction continued on humanity's next impossible project. Ambassador Chin, now gay-haired and tired, gave a tour to a group of young alien scientists who had come to study human methods. They stood in an observation deck watching the massive vessel take shape in space. "What is it?" one of them asked. She was a Kriok researcher, barely 50 years old. "A generation ship," Chen replied, "designed to reach the Andromeda galaxy. The journey will take 2 million years, even with our fastest drives. People who arrive won't be the people who leave. They'll be descendants of descendants, separated from Earth by time and space so vast it's almost incomprehensible." "Why build it?" another young scientist asked. "What's the point of a journey no one alive will finish?" Chen smiled. It was the same smile she had given Malex 2 decades ago when he first asked what else humanity had built. "Because it's there," she said. "Because we can. Because somewhere in the void between galaxies there might be something wonderful waiting to be discovered. And because the moment we stop reaching for the impossible is the moment we stop being human." The young scientist looked at the ship with new understanding. This was what drove humanity forward. Not conquest, not greed, just an endless curiosity and the refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. Somewhere in the depth of space, the galaxy was learning a new lesson, the one that humans had always known. The only limits that truly exist are the ones we accept. And humanity had never been very good at accepting limits.